Thanks for watching Lessons in Minutes with Jaylee. Like, share, and don't forget to subscribe.
So today I'll be looking at allocating service department costs. At the end of the lesson, you should be able to allocate overhead costs using direct allocation method. Now, bear in mind that there are different methods in allocating the service department costs, but at the end of this lesson, you should be able to demonstrate how to allocate the service department costs using the direct allocation method. Within a manufacturing company, there are different departments, right? These departments are categorized into two broad departments, and these are the production department. The production department basically adds value directly to a product or service. Now I'm talking about departments such as machining, finishing, and assembly. So those are examples of production department. Now the other category of departments is a service department. Now the service department basically assists other internal departments in the company. And these are departments such as human resources department, accounting department, the marketing department, financing department, canteen, stores, maintenance department, and there are others depending on the company. Okay, now when we talk about these departments, the service departments, they incur costs and must be allocated to the production department in order to properly cost the products or services produced by the business. In apportioning to the production department, this is done. So we're talking about the services department allocation. This is done according to the use they make of the service department. So when you are allocating to the production department, the portion that you would put to that particular production department will be based on the amount of services that they use of that particular service department. Now, I've mentioned the direct method earlier, but what are the methods in allocating service department costs? There are four methods, four broad methods, and these are direct allocation, which we're going to look at in this session. We have the step-down allocation. There is the repeated distribution, and the final one there is the reciprocal or simultaneous equation method. Now let's talk about the direct allocation method. With the direct allocation method, what you're doing basically is ensuring that each service department cost, which are the support costs, is allocated directly to the production departments only based on the support it makes to the production department. So these service costs, the service departments, those costs, they're only allocated to the production department. And I'm saying only to the production department because you'll find that when you look at another method, you may be allocating service to service department based on the method. But for the direct allocation, you're allocating the service cost. It doesn't matter how much service cost, you're going to allocate the service cost only to the production department. Now let us look at an example of this. JB Company has two service departments and two production departments. The following information is provided in the table below. We have the human resource, maintenance, and those are service departments. We have the production departments, which are the assembly departments and the finishing department. Now the total overhead cost, which is the estimated cost, for the human resources, $50,000. Maintenance is $120,000. Assembly is $300,000. And the finishing is $250,000. In terms of the overhead allocation, the human resource service is distributed to the maintenance department. So that's 20% of it. The assembly, we're saying that you use up 50% based on the question, and the finishing department uses 30%. Maintenance, the human resources department uses 10% of that, the assembly department 60%, and the finishing department 30%. But remember, we are using the direct allocation method. So when we're allocating, we're only going to allocate the services of human resource to assembly and finishing, and the maintenance service to assembly and finishing only, because remember, with the direct allocation, you're only allocating to the production, the service to the production departments and the production departments alone. So let us look at the demonstration in completing that. All right, so here we have our question in this worksheet right here. And the first thing that you will need to do, the first thing that you have to do is to reassemble the data, because basically you want to ignore any reciprocal service offered between the human resource and the maintenance department. Because remember, when you do the direct allocation, what you're doing is to apportion the service department's costs to the production department alone. Only the production department. So let's reassemble that data. So here we have the table, and the human resource, we're going to pick up the amount that is used up or used by the assembly department, and that is coming from the question. We're seeing 50%, so I'm going to enter 50 right there. For the finishing, we have 30%, and even though it is saying percent, you're going to find that your total is only 80 because we are not picking up the 20% that is used up by the maintenance department, because we're doing the direct allocation. So this is why we have to ensure that we reassemble the data. So it's no longer out of 100, it is now out of 80 for the human resource. Let's look at the maintenance. For the maintenance, the assembly uses 60% and the finishing use 30. So that's a total of 90. All right. Now that we have done that, we can move into step 2, where we allocate the services to the production department. So remember, the budgeted cost before allocation coming from the question, we have 50,000 for human resource, 120 for maintenance, assembly is 300,000, and finishing is 250,000. Now we need to allocate the human resource and the maintenance departments to the production departments. So the first thing that you'll have to do, remember, you have to show your workings. You can show your workings in the table, or you can have a section called workings. So I'm going to do my workings to the side. What we are sharing is the cost for the human resource. So let me indicate that human resource. And the first one that I'm going to calculate for is the assembly department. Now, we have to go back to the data that we have reassembled in step 1. The assembly department should get 50 out of the total of 80. And we're going to multiply that by the 50,000 to get the actual value that must be allocated to the assembly department. And based on calculation, that is $31,250. Now let us look at the next production department, which is the finishing. So we're calculating now for the finishing. Now, based on step 1, so going back to step 1, and we have to make reference to step 1 because remember, you have to reapportion your data. You have to reassemble your data. So let's pick up the information there for the finishing, and that is 30 divided by the total of 80, and we're going to multiply by that by the cost that we're sharing, which is 50,000, and that gives us a value of $18,750. Now that we have this information, we can then enter that data in our table. So what we're allocating is the human resource. So let me make a note of that. Allocating human resource. The value that we are allocating is all the costs from that. So we're going to show that the human resource decreases by $50,000, and nothing will be entered in the maintenance cell right there because we're not apportioning anything to the service department. Using the direct method, direct allocation method, you're only allocating to your production department. Based on calculation, the assembly is $31,250 and the finishing is $18,750. Now that we have that, we can then move into allocating. That's allocating the maintenance service cost. Now, the maintenance, we have to do our calculation like we did for the human resource. So we're going to take that same approach, but we're picking up the information as it relates to the maintenance. So what we're sharing is the maintenance cost, and we are sharing, doing the calculation for the assembly department first. And for that, going back to step one to pick up your information, it is 60 divided by the total of 90 and multiply that by the value that we are sharing, which is $120,000, and that gives us a value of 80,000. Now we're going to do our workings for the next production department, which is the finishing. All right, so back to step one to pick up our data. Finishing is 30 divided by the total of 90, and we're going to multiply by the 120,000 that we are sharing, and that gives us a value of 40,000 based on calculation. Now we have that information. We can now enter that in our table. We are now going to show that our maintenance department, the 120,000, it has decreased by that. So we're going to put that in bracket 120,000, because remember, we're sharing this between the two production departments. Assembly based on calculation is 80,000, while for the finishing, that is 40,000. And now that we have that, we can now recalculate. We're going to recalculate the cost for the departments. So recalculate cost. Now, for human resource, the 50, and then we have shared all of that 50. So there's nothing for that department. Maintenance, we have shared all of the 120,000, so that is 0. Now for the assembly, the budgeted cost was 300,000. The allocation coming from human resources, 31,250, while the allocation coming from the maintenance service department is 80,000. Add those figures together, you get a total of $411,250. For the finishing, we're now going to total the cost for that department. We have 250,000 coming from the budgeted costs. We have 18,750, which spring from the human resource service department. And we have 40,000, which came from the maintenance service department. That now gives us a total of $308,750. Now, we can check if we're actually correct. If you go back to the question, looking at the costs coming from each department, human resource 50,000, maintenance 120,000, assembly 300,000, and finishing 250,000. The total of those costs is 720,000. After sharing people, if you total the recalculated costs for the production department, basically if you add 411,250 to 308,750, you should get back that 720,000. And once that is so, we can safely say that we have successfully allocated the service department's cost to the production department using the direct allocation method. So that takes us to the end of this lesson. In our next lesson, we're going to look at the step-down method. So guess what? Join me in that session if you want to learn how to allocate service costs using the step-down allocation method.
Like, share, and don't forget to subscribe.